Have you ever walked into a room and seen the one person you convinced yourself you'd forgotten? The person who made you feel something you weren't allowed to feel? That's what happened to me on a snowy night in Vancouver. I was there for a blind date, a safe, simple blind date that was supposed to help me move on from my ex. But the universe had other plans. Because sitting at that corner table wasn't a stranger. It was her, Bonnie. The woman from my literature class 6 years ago. The one I never let myself think about too long. And suddenly, this wasn't a blind date anymore. It was a second chance I didn't know I'd been waiting for. I'm standing outside a café in downtown Vancouver, watching snow fall through amber streetlights, and I'm about to walk into a blind date I didn't even want. Not because I'm not ready, I am. Or at least I've convinced myself I am. It's been 8 months since Claire and I ended things. 8 months since I finally admitted that being with someone shouldn't feel like constantly apologizing for taking up space. My best friend Maya set this up. You need to remember what it's like, she'd said. To have someone look at you like you're interesting instead of inconvenient. So here I am, proving a point mostly to myself. I push open the door and warm air hits my face along with the smell of coffee and cinnamon. The cafe is one of those places that tries too hard to be cozy Edison bulbs, exposed brick, indie music playing just loud enough to make conversation feel intimate. It's objectively charming. It's also packed, which means I have to actually look for my date instead of pretending I couldn't find her and leaving. Maya showed me exactly one photo. Brown hair, kind eyes, a smile that looked genuine. Her name is, and then I see her. Not the woman from the photo. Well, yes, the woman from the photo. But also Bonnie Richardson from my comparative literature class 6 years ago. Bonnie, who sat 2 rows ahead of me every Tuesday and Thursday, who always had annotations in 3 different colors, who once gave a presentation on Toni Morrison that made half the class cry. Bonnie, who I watched from a distance because I was with Claire. Because I'd convinced myself that the tight feeling in my chest whenever Bonnie laughed was just admiration. Nothing more. Bonnie, who I haven't thought about in years. That's a lie. I've thought about her. Just never let myself think about her too long. She's at a corner table looking at her phone, and she hasn't seen me yet. She's wearing a dark green sweater that makes her hair look warmer than I remember. And there's a confidence in the way she sits, like she's comfortable taking up exactly the amount of space she needs. Not more, not less, just right. I could leave. She hasn't looked up. I could text Maya some excuse about food poisoning or a sudden work emergency, and Bonnie would never know I was here. But then she glances toward the door, and her eyes meet mine, and something flickers across her face that I can't quite name. Recognition, yes. But also something else. Something that makes my pulse stutter. She smiles. Not the polite smile you give a stranger, the kind that says, "Oh, it's you." And I realize with a clarity that's almost uncomfortable she remembers me too. I walk toward her table, and my hands are shaking slightly. Which is ridiculous. This is a blind date. We're both here because we're single and optimistic enough or delusional enough to think a dating app algorithm might know something we don't. Except it's not blind anymore. And I don't know what that means. Lucy, she says as I reach the table. And the way she says my name makes it sound like something worth saying. I had a feeling it might be you when I saw the profile. But I thought maybe I was wrong. You weren't wrong. I sit down across from her, unwinding my scarf with fingers that still haven't steadied. Hi. She's still smiling. And there's something careful in it, like she's trying to read me as much as I'm trying to read her. This is unexpected. Understatement. I manage a laugh that sounds more nervous than I'd like. How long has it been? 5 years. 6. She pauses. You were dating someone. Claire, right? I'm surprised she remembers the name. Surprised. And something else I don't want to examine too closely. Yeah, we broke up. I'm sorry. Don't be. It comes out sharper than I intend, and I soften it with, it was the right call. She nods slowly. And I can see her doing that thing psychologists probably learn in grad school, holding space, not pushing. For what it's worth, she says. You seem different. Good different. Different how? I don't know yet. Her smile turns warmer. But I'm looking forward to finding out. And just like that, the tight feeling in my chest is back. The one I spent 3 years convincing myself meant nothing. The one I'm not sure I can convince myself about anymore. 6 years ago, I met Bonnie in a classroom that smelled like old books and instant coffee. I was 22, 2 years into a relationship with Claire that felt like proof I was doing everything right. Claire was pre-law, ambitious, the kind of person who color-coded her calendar, and knew exactly where she'd be in 5 years. Dating her felt like being part of a plan. And I liked plans. Plans were safe. Bonnie sat 2 rows ahead of me, and I told myself I noticed her because she asked good questions, because her insights were sharp, because she had this way of tilting her head when she was thinking that made her look like she was listening to music no one else could hear. I told myself a lot of things. I never spoke to her beyond polite hallway nods and one group project where we barely interacted because I made sure we were always in different subgroups. It was easier that way. Easier than acknowledging the way my attention snagged on her every time she walked into a room. After that semester ended, I didn't see her again. I graduated, moved in with Claire, started freelancing as a copywriter because my creative writing degree wasn't practical enough for a real career. At least, that's what Claire said whenever I mentioned wanting to work on my novel. I told myself she was being realistic. Supportive, even. But somewhere along the way, I stopped writing anything that wasn't client work. Stopped going to bookstores for hours. Stopped being the version of myself who once stayed up until 3 a.m. because a sentence wouldn't leave me alone. I didn't notice it happening. That's the thing about making yourself smaller, it's gradual. A compromise here, a concession there. Until one day you look in the mirror and barely recognize the person looking back. It took 3 years for me to admit that love shouldn't feel like an apology. The server comes by and we both order coffee. Bonnie gets a latte. I get an Americano. And there's this moment of small talk about the weather, about how crowded the café is, about nothing that matters. But underneath it, there's something else, a current I can feel but can't name. So, Bonnie says after the server leaves, are we going to pretend this is a normal blind date? Or can we acknowledge that it's incredibly weird? I laugh. And it's the first real sound I've made all night. It's so weird. Good weird or bad weird? I consider this. Consider her. I don't know yet. Fair. She leans back in her chair. And I catch myself noticing the way her hands wrap around her mug, the silver ring on her right thumb. For the record, I liked you in that class. I always kind of wanted to talk to you more, but you seemed unavailable. I was, I admit, very unavailable. And now? Now I'm trying to figure out what available even looks like. She nods like she understands exactly what I mean. And maybe she does. Maybe that's why we're both here, 2 people who swiped right on a photo and ended up with something far more complicated than a first date. Well, she says, I'm glad the algorithm has a sense of humor. Or a sense of irony. Maybe both. Our coffee arrives and I take a sip, letting the warmth spread through me. Across from me, Bonnie is smiling again. And I realize with a strange, quiet certainty, I'm not ready for this. But I'm not leaving either. We talk for an hour, maybe more. And it shouldn't be this easy. But it is. Bonnie tells me she finished her PhD in clinical psychology 2 years ago, that she works with teenagers now, mostly queer kids navigating families who don't understand them. There's a steadiness in the way she talks about her work, not like she's trying to impress me, just like she cares deeply. I tell her I'm still writing, though still feels generous. Copywriting pays the bills, but the novel I started years ago is collecting digital dust in a folder I haven't opened in months. Why not? She asks. And there's no judgment in it, just curiosity. I shrug, wrapping my hands around my mug even though the coffee's gone lukewarm. I guess I convinced myself it wasn't worth the time. That I should focus on things that actually make money. Did you convince yourself? Or did someone convince you? The question lands harder than she probably intended, and I have to look away for a second because she's right. It was Claire who always sighed when I mentioned my novel, who'd say things like, "That's nice, but what's your real plan?" Until eventually I stopped mentioning it at all. Both, I finally say. It was both. Bonnie doesn't push. She just nods, and somehow that feels like more than enough. The conversation shifts to lighter things, books we've both read, the absurdity of Vancouver's housing market. A disastrous pottery class Bonnie took last year that resulted in a bowl so lopsided it could only hold exactly 3 grapes. She pulls up a photo on her phone and I laugh so hard I almost knock over my mug. I kept it, she says, grinning. It's on my kitchen counter, a monument to my hubris. That's not hubris, that's optimism. Same thing, depending on the day. And it's easy. God, it's so easy. Talking to her feels like slipping into a conversation we've been having for years. One that just paused for a while and picked back up exactly where it left off. Except we never had this conversation. We barely spoke 6 years ago. But it feels like we should have. I'm mid-sentence something about a book I just finished when I see her. Claire. She's across the café, sitting at a table near the window with a woman I don't recognize. The woman is talking animatedly, gesturing with her hands, and Claire is smiling. But it's the smile she uses when she's being polite, when she's already checked out. I know that smile. I was on the receiving end of it for most of our last year together, and then Claire glances up, and her eyes meet mine. For a second, neither of us moves. The cafe is loud espresso machines hissing, conversations overlapping, but in that moment, it's silent. She looks at me, then at Bonnie, then back at me, and I see at the flicker of something I can't quite name. Not anger, not hurt, something closer to realization. I force myself to look away, back at Bonnie, who's still talking about the book. She hasn't noticed, and I don't want her to, because if she notices then I'll have to explain, and I don't know how to explain the way my pulse just spiked. "You okay?" Bonnie asks, and I realize I've gone quiet. "Yeah." I manage a smile. "Sorry, thought I saw someone I knew." She glances over her shoulder, casual, then back at me. "Did you?" "Yeah, but it's fine." "It is fine. It has to be fine. Claire and I are over. She's on a date, or at least it looks like a date. And I'm on a date. And that's how this works. That's what moving on looks like. Except I didn't expect it to feel like this. Like being caught. Like I'm doing something wrong, even though I'm not. Bonnie's watching me, and there's something in her expression like she's putting pieces together. "Ex?" she asks quietly. I nod. "Want to leave?" I should say yes. Should suggest we go somewhere else. Anywhere else. But part of me doesn't want to. Part of me wants to stay exactly where I am, with Bonnie across from me, proving something I didn't even know I needed to prove. "No," I say. "I'm good here." And I mean it. Because when I look back at Bonnie, at the way she's looking at me, patient, understanding, not demanding anything, I realize something. For the first time in years, I don't feel like I'm apologizing for existing. I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. We stay for another half hour, and I'm hyper-aware of Claire's presence across the room. Not because I want to look at her, I don't, but because I know she's looking at us. At me. I can feel it in the prickle at the back of my neck, the way my posture goes just slightly too straight. It's the same feeling I used to get when I knew I'd disappointed her. When I'd forgotten to pick up her dry cleaning or stayed up too late working on a short story instead of coming to bed. Bonnie doesn't seem to notice. Or if she does, she doesn't say anything. She's telling me about a client, no names, no details. Just the broad strokes of a kid who came out to her parents last month and is still navigating the aftermath. "They love her," Bonnie says. "They're just scared, and sometimes love and fear look the same from the outside." I think about Claire, about the way she used to say she loved me but also needed me to be more practical, more realistic, less, much. Do they ever figure it out? I ask. The parents, I mean. Do they ever stop being scared? Some do, some don't. Bonnie's voice is gentle but honest. But it's not really about them, you know? It's about the kid learning she doesn't need their permission to be herself. The words settle into me in a way I don't expect, and I have to look down at my empty mug because suddenly my throat feels tight. "You're good at this," I say after a moment. "At therapy speaking?" She grins. "Hazard of the profession. I'll try to turn it off." "Don't." I meet her eyes, and the honesty of it surprises me. "I mean it. You're good at seeing people." Her smile softens. "So are you. You just don't always see yourself." It's not a question, but it feels like one. And I don't know how to answer it, so I don't. Instead, I ask, do you think people can really change? Like, fundamentally? "I think people can grow," she says. "If they want to. If they let themselves. And if they don't want to, then they stay exactly where they are, and everyone around them has to decide if that's somewhere they can live." I swallow hard because I know she's not talking about anyone specific, but it feels like she's talking about everything. About Claire, who loved me, but needed me to be smaller. About me, who let myself become smaller because it felt easier than fighting. About the last 3 years and how long it took me to realize I was suffocating. Bonnie reaches across the table, her fingers brushing mine light, tentative, a question more than a statement. "For what it's worth," she says quietly, "I'm really glad you're here." My heart does something stupid and arrhythmic, and I don't pull my hand away. "Me too," I whisper. And I mean it. But then I make the mistake of glancing toward the window, and I see Claire standing up, pulling on her coat. Her date is still sitting, looking confused, and Claire is saying something I can't hear, probably an excuse. Probably a polite exit. She doesn't look at me as she leaves, but I feel the weight of her absence like a door closing, and I realize she saw me happy. Saw me laughing with someone who isn't her. Saw the version of me I used to be before I learned to make myself convenient. Part of me feels guilty, like I should have warned her somehow that I'd be here. Like running into each other was a betrayal, even though it wasn't planned. But another part, a part that's been buried for a long time, feels something else. Relief. Because she saw me, and I wasn't small, I was just me. Bonnie squeezes my hand gently, pulling my attention back. You sure you're okay? Yeah. I squeeze back. I think I am. Good. She lets go, but slowly, like she's reluctant to break the contact. Because I was thinking, she says, if you're not completely traumatized by this extremely weird blind date, maybe we could do it again sometime. Somewhere without your ex staring from across the room. I laugh, and it's real. She wasn't staring. She was definitely staring something. Fair. I smile. And yeah, I'd like that. Yeah? Yeah. We stand, and Bonnie walks me to the door. When we step outside into the cold, the snow is still falling, softer now. Can I walk you home? She asks. I should say no, should take this slow, should protect myself from wanting something too much, too fast. But I don't. I'd like that, I say, and we start walking. The walk to my apartment takes 20 minutes, and we stretch it into 40. Bonnie tells me about the neighborhood she lives in, Commercial Drive. All vintage shops and murals and the kind of coffee places that served oat milk before it was trendy. I tell her about mine, Kitsilano, quieter, closer to the water. The kind of place where people jog at 6 a.m., with expensive dogs. You don't strike me as a 6 a.m. jogger, she says. I'm not. But I like watching them. It's like performance art. She laughs, and the sound makes something in my chest unclench. We talk about small things, big things, everything in between. She asks about my novel, and instead of deflecting like I usually do, I actually tell her about the protagonist who's trying to rebuild her life after losing everything, about the themes of identity and reinvention. About how I started it 5 years ago and got stuck somewhere around chapter 8 because I couldn't figure out how to make the ending feel earned. Maybe you weren't ready to write the ending yet, Bonnie says. Maybe. Or maybe I was writing the wrong ending. I stop walking, and she stops too, turning to face me. The streetlights cast her face in soft gold, and snow catches in her hair like confetti. What do you mean? I ask. I mean, sometimes we think we know where a story is going, but then life happens and the story changes. And the ending we thought we needed isn't the ending that actually fits anymore. I stare at her, and something in my chest cracks open just a little, because she's right. The ending I'd planned for that novel, the one where the protagonist learns to be okay alone, learns that she doesn't need anyone else to be whole. It felt right when I was with Claire, when I was trying to convince myself that independence was the same thing as happiness. But maybe that's not the ending anymore. Maybe the story changed. You're going to be dangerous for my productivity, I say. And my voice comes out softer than I intended. How so? Because now I actually want to write again. Her smile is small and private, like I've given her something valuable. Good. You should. We start walking again, slower now, and I'm acutely aware of the space between us, how easy it would be to close it, how much I want to. When we reach my building, I expect her to say goodbye. Instead, she lingers, hands in her pockets, looking up at the old brick facade. This is me, I say unnecessarily. It suits you. How so? I don't know. It feels solid. Like it's been here a while and isn't going anywhere. I don't tell her that I almost didn't renew my lease last month. That part of me wanted to leave Vancouver entirely, start over somewhere new, somewhere without Claire's ghost in every coffee shop and bookstore. But I stayed because running felt like something the old version of me would do. The one who made herself smaller. Do you want to come up? The words are out before I can second-guess them. Bonnie's eyes widen slightly, and I rush to clarify. Just for tea. Or wine. Or I don't know. I'm not trying to. Lucy. She's smiling. I'd love to. Relief floods through me, and I unlock the door, leading her up 3 flights of stairs to my apartment. It's small, 1-bedroom, a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people, a living room dominated by bookshelves I built myself from YouTube tutorials. Wow, Bonnie says, stepping inside. This is very you. Is that a compliment? Absolutely. She walks over to the bookshelves, running her fingers along the spines. You've organized them by color. I know it's impractical. It's perfect. She turns to me, and there's something in her expression that makes my pulse skip. It's exactly what I would have expected from you. You've known me for approximately 3 hours tonight, and 6 years ago. Don't forget 6 years ago. We barely talked 6 years ago. I know. She takes a step closer. But I noticed you anyway. The air between us shifts, becomes something heavier, more deliberate. Bonnie. I'm not expecting anything, she says quickly. I wanted you to know that I saw you then. And I see you now. And I really like what I see. My breath catches, and I don't know what to say. Don't know how to explain that no one has looked at me like this in years, like I'm something worth paying attention to. So instead, I close the distance between us and kiss her. It's soft, tentative, a question. And when she kisses me back, it feels like an answer. We don't sleep together. We sit on my couch with tea that goes cold, talking until 2 a.m., about everything and nothing. Bonnie tells me about her worst first date, a guy who spent 2 hours explaining cryptocurrency and then asked her to Venmo him for her half of the appetizers. I tell her about the time Claire dragged me to a work gala where I knew no one, and I spent the entire night in the bathroom pretending to have digestive issues just to avoid small talk. That's commitment to the bit, Bonnie says, laughing. It was survival. Were you always that uncomfortable at those things, or did it get worse over time? I think about it. Worse. At first, I tried. But Claire would introduce me as my girlfriend who writes. And people would smile politely, and then ask her about law school. After a while, I stopped trying to be interesting. It was easier. That sounds lonely. It was. I looked down at my mug, but I didn't realize it until after. Bonnie shifts closer, her knee brushing mine. For the record, I think you're extremely interesting. You have to say that. We just made out on my couch. We didn't make out. We kissed once. Very politely. You're right. We should fix that. I'm joking mostly, but Bonnie's eyes darken in a way that makes my stomach flip. Should we? She asks, and her voice is low, careful. I set down my mug. I don't know. Should we? I think, she says slowly, we should do whatever feels right. No pressure, no expectations. What if I don't know what feels right yet? Then we figure it out together. She reaches for my hand, threading our fingers together, and it's such a simple gesture, but it makes my throat tight. I like you, I say quietly. Like, a lot. And that scares me. Why? Because the last time I liked someone this much, I lost myself. And I don't want to do that again. Bonnie squeezes my hand. Then don't. I'm not asking you to be anyone other than who you are. I like who you are. You don't even know me. Not yet. But I want to. And the sincerity in her voice undoes something in me. I lean in and kiss her again. And this time it's not tentative. This time it's surer. Her hand comes up to my face, her thumb brushing my cheekbone, and I feel it everywhere in my chest, in my fingertips, in the parts of me I thought I'd lost. When we pull apart, I'm breathless. Okay, I whisper. That felt right. She grins. Yeah, it did. We talk for another hour, but now we're closer, her arm around my shoulders, my head resting against her. It's easy, comfortable. Like we've done this 100 times before. At some point, she checks her phone and winces. I should probably go. Early day tomorrow. I don't want her to leave, but I nod. Okay. We stand, and I walk her to the door. When we get there, she turns to me. Can I see you again? She asks. Like, soon? How soon? Tomorrow? I laugh, eager. Is that a bad thing? No. I kiss her one more time, quick and soft. Tomorrow's good. Text me when you're free. I will. She leaves, and I close the door behind her, leaning against it with a smile I can't quite control. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm doing something just for me, and it feels incredible. I walk to my bookshelf, the one organized by color that Bonnie called perfect, and I run my fingers along the spines. Then I open my laptop, and for the first time in months, I don't open a client folder. I open the document labeled Novel, Draft 3, and I start typing. Not the ending I'd planned years ago, a new one, where the protagonist doesn't just learn to be okay alone, she learns that love doesn't mean disappearing. It means finally, fully existing. Did this story touch your heart? Then please, don't leave without hitting that subscribe button and giving this video a thumbs up. Your support is everything. It's what allows me to keep bringing you these emotional love stories every single week. And I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, Have you ever run into someone from your past who changed everything? Or maybe you're watching from halfway across the world. Tell me what city and country you're in. I love knowing that these stories are reaching people everywhere, connecting hearts across borders. Every like, every comment, every subscription, it all matters. You're not just watching a story. You're part of a community that believes in love, second chances, and the courage it takes to choose yourself. So please, subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. And if this one meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time, keep believing in love beyond rules.